Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. Welcome to the show, y'all. Now, I'm going to tell you, man, Shirley, you know, her life changed a lot over the last 20 some odd, almost 30 years, right? Changed a lot. And the reason I want to share that with y'all is because a lot of people had these misconceptions about the streets and rising to the level that Shirley rose to and how glamorous the life is and all of these types of things, right? But I'm going to share with you the truth about her life and what happened to her after that. See, what I shared with you in part two is how she got solidified in the game. You understand? That's what solidified her. This is how she became that person. You feel me? But here's the thing. This is what happened. At different times, she had to contend with other people trying to rob her, right? Because she was a woman. It happens to dudes just as easily, right? But because she was a woman, people thought she was an easy mark. So she had to contend with the people kicking in her door, the police kicking in her door, in and out of jail, fighting cases, going back and forth to court, all of those types of things, lawyers sucking all the money away from her, all of that. And on top of that, her mother ended up passing away. Now, let me tell you, I was fortunate enough to get a little bit more detail about her life and how it had changed so much. And she told me, she said that there was one occasion where she got caught up in a case that didn't involve her directly, but one of the people that worked for her. And it always happens like this, y'all. And this person that got caught up knew all of her business. She had started seeing somebody else, right? Because after what Taz did to her, she still held him down. You know what I'm saying? And they remained friends for years. She still held him down, but she couldn't really trust him anymore. He had put everything in jeopardy, and her mother getting hurt like that really changed her view of Taz. So she had found somebody else that was on the streets. You know, he was a street dude as well, in and out, you know what I'm saying, of prison. She didn't mind that. That came with the territory. You know what I mean? So she started messing with this guy, and her heart was into it. For so many years, she had denied those feelings because, you know, Taz was locked up and she didn't want to go all in like that until he was out. But when she broke away from him and she met this other guy, she went all in. She wanted to experience what it really would feel like to have a man in her life that she could trust fully. So she gave all of herself to him and she told all of her secrets and she said that we are going to be partners in this. You feel what I'm saying? To the extent that they could be. And he was cool with that. And he was a solid dude. He had a good reputation in the streets. All of that kind of stuff. Until he got handcuffs put on him and they told him that they were going to career him out. And what they mean when they say career you out, that means you're going to get labeled a habitual criminal. And once they label you an habitual criminal, then your life changes. You'll end up somebody that will never get out of prison. Now, he couldn't handle that. He couldn't handle that. Now, he didn't know all of the details, but he knew enough that the information that he had, he could trade to the feds. So he did. And he convinced them through evidence that she was running everything, that she had the plugs. And it turns out that the people that Shirley was dealing with were already on the Fed's radar. And it was ugly. And they knew that if they could turn Shirley, that they could knock this ring out. Just knock it completely out. See, they had connections to cartel. You feel what I'm saying? And with those types of connections, the feds considered them a threat to the security of the United States, y'all. Period, point blank. So they ramped up the operation to get Shirley. And they were going to use her dude to do it. So they put the pressure on him and said, look, you're going to have to wear a wire. And on top of, listen to me now, on top of him wearing a wire from occasion to occasion, they convinced him to let them come in there, let them know when she was not going to be there at the house that they were living in at this time, so they could wire it up. They tapped her phone, they wired up the bedroom, they wired up the bathroom. I mean, they wired up the whole house. So it was no conversation that they would be having in that house or on the phone that they wouldn't have access to. I mean, they came hard. They had the whole place wired up. The whole place. So they, over the months, they kept listening to conversation after conversation of her talking. She didn't like to talk business at home. But he started bringing up stuff and asking these questions and that question. And because she was fully committed, she was fully in love. She didn't feel any need to censor anything. She did not know what had happened to him. She did not know he had been flipped by the feds. So she would tell him things, and some things just instinctually she wouldn't say. You know what I mean? The streets have, you know how sometimes when we be talking and we'll say, and so on, and blah, blah, blah. Y'all hear me say that sometimes, right? What a lot of people are doing when they say that, they're using the blah, blah, blah to fill in the blanks without saying the exact thing that they should be saying, because through instincts alone, because when you've been in the streets for a long time, you learn certain things you don't say, but your brain is still computing that long sentence, so you fill in the blank and say blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And that's what she would do from time to time when she would talk to him about so on and so forth and dude them down there, right? She would say that. It was just a natural thing. It becomes a natural thing for you when you're in the streets, not to say certain people's names, not to call out certain locations and so on and so forth. So you substitute that in the sentence with another word. It's just what happens. You don't go to school to learn that. It just happens. It just happens. You learn that from other people in the streets. So that's how she would talk to him. But what they would do later on is based on those conversations, they would let him listen back to that tape and see if he knew anything that would make sense to put in that blank. And most of the stuff he didn't know. He couldn't fill in the blanks. But some things he did. Like her route. What did she do all day, every day? For years, she would still go to this car lot and rent out cars. She never would buy a car. And they thought that was odd because she had a lot of money. A lot of money. Why are you renting cars by the week or by the month? Why are you doing that? And these people that were on her radar, a couple of them worked at this dealership. So they started to piece the puzzle together. It's easy to put a puzzle together when you got all the pieces laid out in front of you. You just got to take your time and keep trying them and see if it fits here, see if it fits there. So now when they see that you got a couple of the people that working at this car dealership that are already under surveillance, on the radar for the feds as being involved in drug trafficking, now they starting to say, well, maybe this dealership is where they're exchanging the drugs. So they get a federal warrant. Get a federal warrant to start surveilling the dealership. Now they're watching it around the clock. Watching it around the clock. And then they start to see the pattern. Whenever Shirley, and other people, but whenever Shirley would come by there, she'd get a new car, a different car, drive off. Then she would make phone calls to certain people because they got the phones tapped. They would meet her in certain places. So now they're starting to get wants to tap their phones. Now all of a sudden they see, okay, when these things happen, drugs hitting the streets, the puzzle is coming together. They're building the case. And the feds are patient, y'all. Y'all already know that. If you've ever been in trouble with the feds, you know the feds patient. So the case is coming together. They're getting enough leverage, right? After 6 or 8 months, they think they got enough. Now, they don't tell her boyfriend. They don't tell Shirley's new boyfriend that they're finna get her because they don't know if he would tip her off yet. Feel what I'm saying? Now, you got to keep in mind what I just said, y'all. They've been working with him to set her up, right? And they still don't trust that he won't tell her when the time comes to run. So they don't tell him what's going on. They tell him to come down to the area. So he's down at the station. They got him locked up in a cell, talking to him just casual. You know what I mean? He don't even know what's going on. Next thing you know, after a couple hours, he starts to think, what's going on? Why can't I leave? He looks up. Guess who he sees coming in handcuffs? It's Shirley. She'd been crying. You can see the tracks on her face from the mascara is running down her face. She's been crying. And when he looks at her, they don't even tell him to sit down. They let him look because they want her to see him. They want her to see him. And when she looks at him, she just drops straight down. Now, keep in mind, I want you to visualize this, y'all. She got on handcuffs. And she's walking through the station, this area where they arrested her at. And she's got 2 female officers, one on each side, holding her one hand behind her back. You know, she got on cuffs. They're walking beside her. And when she sees him, she collapses. She collapses and drops to her knees, and she's crying inconsolably. And they're telling her to get up. And they lift her up. And when they lift her up, it's almost like they had to pull her up off the ground and drag her up. They stand her up. Her legs are wobbling and shaking, she said. She can't even walk. So they basically just move forward without her moving her legs and drag her. Then they set her down in the chair. She cannot help but continue to stare at him while he stands behind this other door looking through the window. And they locked eyes. And she looks at him, she said, and with her eyes, she said, "Did you do this?" And he puts his head down and he walks off the door. And she turns and faces the officer that's sitting at the chair, at the desk where she's at. And the officer says, "It's been a rough night for you. It's been a long time coming. Now, can we help each other get out of here? Or is this going to be one of those situations where you don't leave back out of here? It's up to you." She sat there for a few minutes. She said what seemed like minutes, but it was a few seconds. She stared at him. And she said, "What happens now?" He said, "It depends on you. It depends on what you're willing to do." So she said he started laying out all the evidence on the desk. Pictures, tapes, all the things that her route, all the times that she had been to the car dealership, renting a car, all of this he's laying out. And he shows her pictures of her house where they wired the house up. And when her boyfriend was in the house when this was going on, they put him in the pictures. So she would know. We know everything. She's crushed. I'm talking about crushed. She doesn't have any clue as to how serious this is. So she tells him, "I want to talk to my lawyer." Now, this the feds. So when she said that, the feds said, "Are you sure? You don't want to talk to us first?" She said, "I'm sure." He said, "We're not coming back." And she said that's when that feeling in her stomach hit her. She was like, "Do I say something or do I keep my mouth shut?" And she kept her mouth shut. She kept her mouth shut, y'all. And they took her in the back, booked her. She saw her lawyer a couple of days later, and he laid out all the evidence against her. Told her everything that he had had so far that they had given him access to, and what he learned from her. Based off of that, he said, this is not official because I got to get to this motion of discovery, get all of the evidence. He said, but based on what you're telling me, you're just a small piece in this. And they need you to flip on the people that you've been dealing with. And he said, and if you do that, you might be able to walk out of here with just a few years. If you don't do that, you're going to be gone for some decades. And when he told her that, she said it almost felt like she aged in that second. She said she could feel the gray hairs coming out of her head when he said that. She could feel the bags developing up under her eyes when he said that. Got to keep in mind, she's still young. She's still young at this time. In her 20s. Mid to late 20s at this time. And she said she felt like her world had crashed. She started thinking about all the things that she wanted to do, wanted to have a baby, wanted to go back to school, wanted to live the life, and enjoy the money that she had made. Travel the world, all of those types of things. She said she saw all of that flashing before her eyes. All of that was flashing before her eyes. So when her lawyer left and she went back in, she remembers distinctly all of the other women that were in there and listening to all the stories they were telling about their dudes and how they took a charge for their dude and now their dudes are out there messing around with other women, how they don't come visit, they don't hardly take any of their phone calls, how they don't have any family support, all the people that they help, how they all have turned against them and they don't have anybody, so on and so forth. And she got to thinking about her mother that had recently passed away and how she had nobody. Her stepfather, he had gotten out and gone on about his business. And she didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to do. She was all alone. The one person that she trusted turned on her. Turned on her. So she reached out to the one other person that she had in her life, and that was Taz. That was Taz. Taz had gotten out, so she wrote Taz a letter. Told him what was going on. He had heard about it in the streets. The streets talk, no secrets. So he wrote her back and told her if there was anything that he could do, he would help her. Taz, he had changed his life. He had turned it around. Was working, didn't have a lot. But he was working, staying away from the streets, staying away from trouble. And he told her, he said, I'll be there for you like you were there for me. So she decided not to testify. She said it wasn't because she cared about the people that she was working for. She just said she just couldn't see herself doing that. She just couldn't see herself doing that because she had made the decisions that she had made to do what she did, even though she felt like, everybody used her along the way. She still felt like she was complicit in that. She made her own decisions. She thought a lot about her daddy, she said. She thought a lot about her daddy. She spent quite a few years in the federal penitentiary, y'all. Quite a few years. When she got out, she was in her mid-40s. And she felt, this is what she told me, she felt like she had wasted her life. Because the path that she had chosen to take was a path that could end only with prison, hospital, or the graveyard. Remember that. Prison, hospital, or the graveyard. That's it. Now, see, life happens. We go through life and we all have our ups and downs, right? We all do. And no matter what you do in life, you're going to pass away. But along that journey, what legacy are you leaving behind? Are you leaving behind a legacy where people will say virtuous things about you, good things? Don't get it twisted. People say good things about drug dealers, but and people that committing crimes and doing all kinds of stuff and all this whole type of thing say they were good people, this is that, but they weren't doing good things, y'all. They weren't doing good things. So tell the truth about it. Because by sugarcoating that lifestyle, you mislead people. And you don't know how it's going to affect that 12-year-old person. See, if you remember, Shirley was 12 years old when her father got killed in the streets. And she was a daddy's girl. And she wanted to honor her daddy in her way. And the streets talked about him like he was a giant. And it made her want to be a part of that. She was 12 years old. But if somebody would have told her the truth about it, maybe, just maybe, they would have sent her in another direction. Do we really want the people that we love, the people that we say we love the most, to live the life that I'm living right now? In a cell? I can't even turn the heat on or off in here. It's freezing in here. We're in the wintertime, y'all. There's no thermostat in this room. I don't control the heat. I don't control the air. People walking by doing what they want to do. I'm sitting on a phone in the pod, looking down over the stairwell here, and I see people sitting at the table with no hope, putting puzzles together. Is that the type of life that you want? I'm on a phone that gives me 30 minutes to talk. And then this voice comes on and says, you have 1 minute left. Is that the type of life that you want? It shouldn't be. And that's why I wanted to share this story with you about Shirley. After all that she'd been through, she felt cheated. She felt cheated out of life. She still doesn't have any kids. She wanted kids. She still doesn't have any kids. She didn't have any siblings. It's just her. Her mother's gone and her dad is gone. It's just her. She didn't even bother to get to know her extended family, her mother's family or her father's family. She never had the chance or opportunity to do that. It's just her. She does a lot of volunteer work now, talking to people, not wanting to take the same path that she took, but it's just her. Is that the type of life that you want? Is that the type of life that you want? Look here, y'all, I'm going to get on down. Just give y'all something to think about while you're on your way to work or while you're on your way home from work or wherever and whenever you listen to the show. Just think about it. Think about that. If you know somebody that's involved in their life, send this to them. Let them listen to it. Tell them about the show. Tell them about the show, y'all. Share the show with some people. Appreciate y'all. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.